Dear brothers and sisters, good morning. Welcome to St. Sarkis Church. Today we are reading from the Gospel of St. Luke, the parable of the 10 minas. Jesus told a parable about how a master gave 10 minas to his servants. By the way, that's a currency, to his servants, and he told them to invest the money while he was gone. After he came back, he called the servants and he asked them, "What did you do with what I gave you?" The first servant said, "You gave me 10 and I invested and I've earned another 10. The master praised the work of the first servant. The second servant came and the master asked him about what he did with the money that he was given. And the second servant said, "You gave me 10, I invested your money, and I have earned 5 more. The master again praised the second servant. And then came the third servant, and the master asked him the same question. And the servant said, "Well, I knew that you are a harsh master. Therefore, I kept my money. I didn't do anything with it. Here is your money back to you." And of course, the master was not happy. But what's interesting in the response of the servant today is that he says, "I was afraid. I was afraid, and for that reason, I did not invest." Most of the time, we focus on the success stories, right? We focus on the first servant or even the second servant. But today, I would like us to focus on the example of the third servant, the servant who failed, who didn't do anything. Why? Because he was afraid. What was he afraid of? He was afraid of failure. How do we define success in life? To me, success is built on a series of failure. There was this TED talk that I watched a while ago about a person, I believe he was a physician, and I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing his name correctly. His name was Mishkin Ingwale. You can Google him. This person wanted to create some technology to help test for anemia because people were dying unnecessarily, he said. "I saw this need, so you know what I did? I made it." And everyone in the TED speech gave him a big applaud. And then he said, "And it didn't work. And then I made it 32 more times, and then it worked." So if this person had stopped from the first time he tried and he failed, this technology would have never been available. This person was not afraid of failure. Success is built on a series of failures. Today, I would like to share with you a quote from one of the beloved presidents of this country. This comes from President Roosevelt, and this speech is known as the speech in the arena. This was given in the University of Sorbonne almost a century ago. And he says, "It is not the critic who counts. It is not the man who sits and points out how the doer of deeds could have done things better and how he falls and stumbles. The credit goes to the man in the arena whose face is marred with dust and blood and sweat. But when he's in the arena, at best, he wins, and at worst, he loses. But when he fails, when he loses, he does so daring greatly." Life is about daring greatly, my friends. But sometimes we are so afraid to be daring. We are so afraid of being vulnerable because we are afraid that we might lose something. We are afraid to try. We are afraid to be vulnerable because there is this prime feeling in us, the feeling of shame, that stops us. Shame and guilt are very similar, but they are different in this way. Guilt is, I made a mistake. And when I come to you and I tell you I made a mistake, most of you would be willing to forgive me, right? Thank you, yes. Shame is, I am a mistake. And it becomes very difficult to forgive myself, to accept myself, and to live my life to the fullest. I'm going to share with you a story, a controversial one. And if you don't see me here next week, you know why. You know that there is this heavy metal band, Metallica, that I love very much. And they released an album in 2008. And one of the songs that I fell in love with is called Broken, Beaten, and Scarred. And if you listen to the music, it is very cliche. I mean, the words, I'm sorry. He says, you rise, you fall, you're down, and you rise again. And then he says, what don't kill you, make you more strong. But the part that I love about this song, or in this song, is where he says, show your scars. And he repeats this throughout the song, show your scars. And you would wonder why, what is going on? And if you would like to know about the story, obviously you have to go back a few years prior to the release of the album and watch a movie that is called Some Kind of Monster. This is, again, a documentary that was made about them. Initially, they called these movie makers to document them making their new album. They were trying to be creative, but the work was not going anywhere. And then, in the process of making the new album, the lead singer just one day disappears, leaving a note that he is checking himself into a rehab. And he stays there for such a long time. Prior to his rehab, obviously he was an alcoholic, and he was very controlling, very angry. The relationship in the band was such a bad one. He comes out of the rehab, and he is like a newborn child. Now that tough guy, spending time with his family, going to his daughter's ballet classes, learning how to be a father, learning how to be a husband. This is a story that teaches us about vulnerability. And in our lives, being vulnerable, most of the time is conceived as being weak. But being vulnerable is the true way of living. Because it is an emotional risk that you're taking. You're exposing yourself to the uncertainty of life, but it's the power that fuels your life. Without that feeling of vulnerability, you will stay in the same place of your life. Once you embrace vulnerability, you will be able to travel the unbeaten path. You don't have to know about Metallica to learn vulnerability. Look at the example of Jesus Christ. We're about to celebrate Christmas. Look, where was he born? His parents, Mary and Joseph, are the greatest examples of being vulnerable. Jesus being embraced by the shepherds, those who were marginalized in the society, is the greatest example of accepting to be vulnerable. My brothers and sisters, let us not be afraid of failure. Let us try our best, and let's ask God to help us. May God bless you all now and always and forever.